Yesterday, a body was pulled out of a pond at an Arizona golf course, face down, unresponsive, 115 miles from the Tucson home where Nancy Guthrie was last seen alive. No identification yet, no confirmed connection to the case. But Nancy Guthrie has been missing for 126 days, and in 126 days there have been 0 arrests, 0 named suspects, and 0 answers. So yes, people are paying attention. My name is Neo. This is Crime Update Room. Today we are going through this entire case from the night Nancy vanished to the DNA sitting in the FBI lab right now to every development this week. Let's get into it. Saturday, January 31st, 2026, 5:32 in the evening. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, mother of NBC Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie, takes an Uber to her daughter's home in Tucson for a family dinner. She has limited mobility. She has a pacemaker. She takes daily medication for a heart condition. But she was sharp. She was present. And that night, she had dinner with her family, the same way she had done many times before. At 9:48 p.m., her family drops her off at her home in the Catalina foothills. The garage door opens. Footage confirms it. At 9:50 p.m., it closes. She was home. Then sometime in the next few hours, everything went wrong. At 1:47 in the morning on February 1st, Nancy's doorbell camera went offline. Not a dead battery. Not a glitch. The FBI later confirmed a masked suspect was captured on a neighboring camera tampering with it. The camera was physically removed from the wall. Whoever did this knew about that camera. They planned for it. 41 minutes later, at 2:28 a.m., the app connected to Nancy's pacemaker lost contact with her phone. The device monitoring her heart in real time went dark. Nobody knew anything was wrong until 11:56 the next morning, when relatives arrived and found the house empty. They searched every room. They called her name. At 12:30 p.m., they called 911. When Pima County Sheriff's deputies got there, they found drops of blood on the front porch. Blood that was later confirmed to match Nancy Guthrie. Sheriff Chris Nenos said it clearly. Nancy Guthrie was targeted. She was chosen. This was not random. Somebody picked her. A few days after Nancy disappeared, investigators found something important in a field about 2 miles from her home. A glove. At first, it may have looked like one small piece of evidence. But when they compared it with nearby doorbell footage from the night Nancy vanished, it appeared to match what the person on camera had been wearing. Then the FBI confirmed what made it even more serious. The glove had DNA on it, and the DNA belonged to an unknown male. No name, no record, no fingerprints in the system. Nothing that connected him to any law enforcement database in the country. Investigators ran the profile through CODIS, the national database used to compare known DNA profiles. No match. That meant whoever left that glove behind had never been entered into the system before. But today, a dead end in CODIS does not always mean a dead end in the case. There is another method investigators can use. It is called Investigative Genetic Genealogy, or IgG. This was the same kind of technology that helped identify the Golden State case after more than 4 decades. The idea is simple, but powerful. Millions of people have sent their DNA to Ancestry and family history websites. Those profiles can show connections between relatives. Parents and children share about half of their DNA. Grandparents and grandchildren share about a quarter. First cousins share a smaller but still useful amount. So when investigators have DNA from an unknown person, they may not find that person directly. Instead, they look for a relative, a cousin, a distant cousin, someone connected to the same family line. From there, they begin building the family tree. They follow names, ages, locations, and family branches until the possibilities begin to shrink. That is how investigators eventually identified Joseph James DeAngelo in the Golden State case. For decades, he lived quietly in California. He had once worked as a police officer. He was not sitting in CODIS waiting to be found. But in 2018, investigators uploaded crime scene DNA to a genealogy database. They found a distant relative, built the family tree, and narrowed it down. Then they collected DNA from something he had thrown away. Hours later, the match was confirmed. More than 40 years of hiding ended with one genetic clue. So when the FBI confirmed on February 16, 2026, that they were using this same method in Nancy's case, it sounded like the investigation was about to move quickly. They were testing the glove. They were also looking at samples taken from inside Nancy's home. Hair samples, bedsheet cuttings, material from the room where she had been sleeping before she disappeared. That should have been a major turning point. But instead of speeding up, the case seemed to slow down. Early in the investigation, Sheriff Chris Nanos chose to send some of the evidence from Nancy's home to a private forensic lab in Florida. Not the FBI lab in Quantico, not a state lab, a private lab in Florida. That decision immediately raised questions. One major DNA testing company publicly criticized the move, saying it could delay a case where time mattered. The sheriff defended his decision. He said his department had already been working with that lab and wanted the evidence handled in one place for consistency. But behind the scenes, the situation was not that simple. According to reports, the FBI had been asking for access to that evidence from early in the investigation. There were growing tensions between local investigators and federal authorities over who should control the evidence process. And while those disagreements continued, the hair samples stayed in Florida for 11 weeks. Then, on April 15 and 16, the Florida lab finally sent the original hair sample to the FBI laboratory in Quantico. The FBI later confirmed that it had requested the material more than 2 months earlier, but instead of going straight to the FBI, it had first been sent to the private lab in Florida. 11 weeks later, the original sample was finally transferred for federal testing. That statement said a lot. It was not the language of smooth cooperation. It sounded like the FBI was putting the delay on record, and in a case like this, that kind of paper trail matters. The DNA dispute did not happen in isolation. It happened while the Pima County Sheriff's Department was falling apart from the inside. Reports emerged that Sheriff Nanos had faced allegations of lying on his resume and lying under oath. His own deputies, through their union, passed a unanimous vote of no confidence against him. Not close, unanimous. Separate from the Guthrie case, his department was the subject of an FBI RICO investigation. There were allegations of a deputy-on-deputy sexual assault, reports of political opponents being placed on administrative leave. Then Fox News Digital published over 220 pages of emails showing that between July and December 2025, months before Nancy disappeared, a reality television production crew had been given extensive behind-the-scenes access to the department. They filmed arrests. They filmed use of force incidents. And buried in those emails was a detail that mattered directly to this investigation. The head of the Homicide and Cold Case Division had been reassigned in the year before the kidnapping. The person who would have led an abduction case like this, reassigned. A law enforcement source who spoke to investigators described the homicide leadership at the Pima County Sheriff's Department as inexperienced. So here is what you have. An 84-year-old woman taken in the night. A reshuffled homicide unit. Evidence sent to a private lab in Florida for 11 weeks. A sheriff facing a recall effort. A no-confidence vote from his own deputies. And a federal RICO investigation on a separate matter. And the FBI, sitting in Quantico, waiting 2 months for a hair sample. That is the investigation that was supposed to find Nancy Guthrie. While DNA work continues, behavioral experts have been building a picture of who did this. The facts are clear on one thing. This was planned. Whoever came into that house that night knew about the doorbell camera and disabled it. They knew she would be home alone. They knew the layout. They knew her routine. Sheriff Nanos said it himself from early on. Nancy Guthrie was targeted. Veteran forensic scientist Barbara Butcher, speaking publicly this week, put forward a specific theory. She believes the person responsible was a local service worker, a handyman, a contractor, someone who had been inside that home and used that access to study it. Butcher also raised something the family has had to come to terms with. Given Nancy's age and her heart condition, She suspects Nancy may have died shortly after the abduction, possibly from shock or a health complication. A retired FBI special agent involved in reporting on the case raised a separate concern, that whoever did this may not stop. That the level of planning and precision involved suggests a person with prior criminal behavior and potentially the willingness to do it again. A behavioral profiler told investigators that retribution could be a factor in the motive, a grudge, a grievance, against Nancy or against what her family represented. Multiple sources have now converged on one theory. The person who took Nancy was someone who knew her, someone she had contact with, someone familiar with the rhythms of her life. June 4th, 2026. Phoenix fire crews were called to the Arizona Biltmore Estates golf course near 32nd Street and Camelback Road. When they arrived, they found an adult in one of the water features on the course. The person was not responding. The area was closed off, and officials began the process of identifying the individual. Early reports said there were no clear signs that another person was involved, but authorities also made it clear that the matter is still being reviewed. The person has not been publicly identified, and at this time, no official statement has connected this discovery to the Nancy Guthrie case. The golf course is about 115 miles from Tucson, where Nancy was last seen. So right now, it remains an open question, and we will only follow it as far as confirmed information takes us. What we do know is this. In a case with more than 23,000 tips and a reward now above 1.3 million, every new discovery gets attention. That is where things stand. Day 126. The FBI now has the hair sample from inside Nancy's home. They have the glove evidence. They have the bedsheet clipping. Investigative genetic genealogy is being applied to all of it. The combined reward for useful information is now more than 1.3 million. That includes $1 million from the Guthrie family, $100,000 from the FBI, and additional amounts from other sources. So far, it has not been claimed. The Pima County Sheriff's Department recently released its first official statement in weeks. They confirmed that forensic testing, genetic analysis, and the review of security footage are still ongoing. No person has been publicly named. No one has been taken into custody. This week, Kim Kardashian also spoke about the case publicly, saying she could not understand how there still seemed to be so little to work with. Ashley Flowers, host of a popular True Case podcast, also said the case left her with serious questions. Sheriff Nanos has said some details are being withheld from the public, not because officials are trying to hide information, but because they want to protect the case. His words were, "It's done because we got to protect our case." Authorities have also said they believe the investigation will eventually lead to someone being held responsible. They just have not said when. The Golden State Killer hid for 40 years. He thought the clock had stopped on him. He was wrong. Joseph James D'Angelo was identified through a genealogy database, a distant relative, and 4 hours of DNA confirmation work. Arrested in 2018 after decades of silence. The person who took Nancy Guthrie left DNA at the scene. The FBI has it. The genealogy databases they are working with today are far larger than they were even 5 years ago. Millions more Americans have submitted their DNA. The net is wider. The FBI has confirmed they will be entering a DNA profile of an unknown male into the system once quality control is complete. When that goes in, the clock starts on whoever did this. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She has a heart condition. She needs daily medication. Her daughter goes on national television every morning. This case is not closed. If you are new here, subscribe. We cover cases like this, and we stay on them. Drop a comment. What do you think happened to Nancy Guthrie? We will see you on the next update.